Nice. We're going to have a panel on asymmetrical finance. The moderator comes from Switzerland, which feels like he might be quite a good neutral moderator for this panel. Please make all the panelists and the moderator feel very welcome. Put your hands together for Francesco, Hannah, Raul, and Alon.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks so much for the warm intros. Let's see if I will be like Swiss neutral with my questions today. But cool, so are you guys excited? So let's hear some like shout. Are you guys excited for it Barcelona? Okay, let's try it again. Are you guys excited for it Barcelona? Okay, good. So we can finish this and go back to do some lunch or something. Cool, let's do a quick round of intros. And yeah, familiar faces, but hey, let's start with you.
Yeah, so hello everyone, I'm Hannah, co-founder of Asymmetry Finance, and we are essentially a liquid staking aggregator, so trying to widen the validator set of Ethereum's validators, and we'll get into all of that, but yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Hi everyone, happy to be here. My name is Alon. I am one of the founders at SSV Network. We develop distributed validators as a network, basically with the goal and the vision to transition Ethereum from single point of failure type of infrastructure for staking all the way to distributed infrastructure using DVT.
And thank you for having me. I'm Raul. I'm one of the co-founders of Diva, which is a liquid staking platform powered by Distributed Validator Technology, sort of like SSV, but everything kind of fully integrated within one single platform.
Nice, awesome intros. So let's start with this. This is not an easy topic, right? I think it's not straightforward. I've been paneling a lot of in general topics, and I think before jumping in benefits or things they want to start, why do we need distributed validator today?
So Ethereum staking began about 3 years ago. December 2020 was the genesis block for the Bitcoin chain. And what we saw basically from that moment on is basically two trends. One is an incredible amount of ETH went into staking. I think we're now at, what is it, 600 plus thousand validators. My personal opinion is going to hit probably 1 million in the next 12 to 18 months. It's a huge chunk of Ethereum being staked. The problem is that most of that Ethereum is basically distributed into 4 or 5 entities. So those 4 or 5 entities, with the majority of them in the US, control Ethereum today. So obviously I'm not insinuating they're malicious or anything, but nonetheless 4 or 5 entities control Ethereum. The reason why is it's very difficult to run infrastructure at scale for staking. There's a lot of technicalities going into it, a lot of risk, but the point being is that those 4 or 5 are controlling Ethereum. And obviously with the vision that the ethos of Ethereum is obviously to be the exact opposite. And so when distributed validator tech came along about 3 years ago, it had the notion of taking in a single Ethereum validator and splitting it up into independent operators. Those operators can be completely different entities, completely different geolocations, or completely different regulatory frameworks, and together they can work to actually do staking on Ethereum. Now, if we take both of those trends, both centralization and the growth of Ethereum, we need a way to combat that centralization forces. Otherwise, we'll get to a point where Ethereum is going to be very susceptible for censorship, for just attacks in general, but also malicious activity. And so with that hope, DVT technology really wants to try and solve that single point of failure type of infrastructure we have today. We have different ways of going about doing that, but I think everyone can agree on the core principle, which is we're at a very dangerous, I think, place where Ethereum accelerates. We're both hitting the accelerator pad, but we also don't really have the infrastructure to support it. So that's where we're at.
That's super interesting. How many of you guys are staking ETH? Is it on a centralized way? On a decentralized way? Okay, so why we're doing this panel if everybody's already decentralized? Cool. But so you touched a little bit on benefits. Does anybody of you want to speak a little bit the benefit of why we should stake on a fully decentralized way? Anna, if you should.
Yeah, so, well, I mean, I guess just general benefits of staking. I think we're all well familiar, but, you know, if you have an asset, how capitally efficient do you want that to be? You probably want to maximize your efficiency, so let's get some staking yield. As you said, there are risks associated with running your own validator set. You have slashing risk, you have to have some technical knowledge. So we also want to reduce those barriers to entry and make it so as many people as possible can have the highest capital efficiency that they're looking for with their Ethereum. Unfortunately, people are also tend to be a little lazy, and so it makes sense with like 10 Ethereum to go with, say, you know, you're not going to move the needle in any significant way of the validator set, so go with the largest and most well-known and trusted provider like Lido. And that's where we're seeing these issues, is because you know, I think Lido at this point controls 32% of all Ethereum validators, which is crazy for this decentralized system. And so we need DVT and things like that, which SSV, like, love what you guys are doing. But we also need to make it, you know, easier for people to enter the space. And so basically, I guess what we're trying to do is offer offer people access to the specialized market leaders in liquid staking, and so that they can access that capital efficiency, have a wide validator set, and reduce their own risk. But essentially, if you spin up your own validator, you know, you can get slashed, things like that. So what's an easy way to get a wider validator set on your own, but still with just a few clicks?
Yeah, that's super interesting. Like, you know, the fact that aggregating services is a core value also for end users is something that we are underestimating, you know. Like, we launched, I mean, with MetaMask we launched swaps, right? And, you know, people were thinking, oh, aggregating is not a big issue, but then you also want to see, like, you know, better rates, or like trying to find a way to basically mitigate also the risk to go like in this specific platform and swap. Same with like validator decisions.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, aggregation incentivizes competition, and at the end of the day, what we don't want is to Ethereum to become a monopoly of someone. And I want SSV to be alive. I want Lido to be alive. I want Rocket Pool. I don't know, Swell, anybody. I mean, the more the better, because at the end of the day, that is what makes a network decentralized.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's exactly it, right? There's these great products out there. So we, like Lido, what they've done is awesome. And it was so revolutionary when they did it, which is why they've gained so much market share. But now, you know, we do have Rocket Pool, we do have Swell, Staffy. There's the amount of inbound messages I get on Telegram on a daily basis of like people who are curious about creating their own validator, and they want to specialize in this. Because the other thing is, like, I've helped many people set up Ethereum validators the old-fashioned way before liquid staking, and everyone was always so afraid of like, okay, so I need to keep track of, you know, these keys, and okay, what is slashing? And if you have people setting up validators on their own, just one or two, it's great that we can all do that, and we have the freedom of choice to do that. Obviously, you need 32 ETH, and there's some barriers to entry, but it's also great to have these specialized protocols that have, because they're specialized, they've reduced the risk. So it makes this network more secure. So if we can keep seeing specialized services that lower the barrier to entry of staking and find a way to get the market share in a highly competitive market, I think that that's what's important. We can keep them all alive, but and have these specialized, really good products for people, but find a way to, you know, make it distribute kind of from our current market leader a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sounds super cool. Yeah, like sometimes I'm playing a little bit the devil advocate here. Is that, you know, like, you know, the triangle about like scalability, privacy, and the efficiency. Like, so what are the trade-offs? I mean, I understand this is great. Like, we need this, but what are the trade-offs, or how we are dealing with in terms of like, you know, you touched a little bit on security, but like also capital efficiency, like for distributed validators.
I think that, well, at least the way we took it, or our strategy was, about 2 years ago, we kind of realized that there's going to be a lot of competition on the user-facing applications. So Lido, Rocket Pool back in the day were in existence, but we knew there's going to be a wide variety of different protocols. We think it's going to mimic the curve that DeFi saw, where Uniswap and MakerDAO and Compound were the first ones, but then later on, when it became commoditized, you had a million different options, each one with a different flavor. And so, and we understood how staking is actually looking like on the practical level, where 95% of the stake is not solo stakers. I'm a solo staker, I love you guys, but you're not the majority. And you can't be, because this is not this is not the type of ecosystem we have. We have, most of the people are not very technical. And even if you are technical, it's not like you want to do DevOps for the rest of your life every day, right? So, and so having that in mind, we said, okay, where DVT can be kind of plugged into. And so my kind of solution was DVT as an infrastructure, because ultimately you're still going to have the Liders of the world and the Rocket Pools of the world, and that's where ETH is flowing to. But I think DVT at its core is really the value for the developer. The developer is really the one, or developer, the researcher, the product manager, those are the ones that can really value the infrastructure they're using, because those are their tools. And so for me, that's where DVT can have the most impact. I think that DVT should be completely transparent for the average user. They shouldn't know what it is the same way they shouldn't know what an L2 is going into the future. They should just interact with a good web app, with a good wallet, and that's it. And I think that's where the DVT will have the majority of the impact. And in terms of the risks, I think there's a much bigger risk. I mean, obviously we have the risk of, is DVT working, can it scale, like all of those types of things, but I think those are more like the short to medium term type of risks. I think that once we go mainnet, when people start seeing that, and we kind of iron out the kinks and the quirks, it's going to work well. And by the way, DVT is not built on like space age type of technology. It's really proven technology, just put together in a different way. And so I think that's where the majority of the impact is, and I think there's much bigger risk in not transitioning into something like DVT than trying to say it might have risk. Everything has risks, but I think the past 2 years we've proven that DVT can work actually better than the current validators we have today. I mean, we've just launched mainnet. We are outperforming existing validators on mainnet, and so I think the majority of the risk is not making the change. It doesn't take much for the US government, or any government for that matter, to come to the 3 or 4 biggest entities and say, from this moment on, you're starting to censor those types of transactions, those types of users, and such restrictions. And I think that's the biggest risk we have.
Yeah, I remember you guys, especially, I mean, like from the start, like when you kind of like were leading the way of front running protection for validators, and now you're like evolved to like all these like ecosystem of instruments for validator to building even your own network. And yeah, congrats on that. Yeah, cool. Yeah, by the way, like if you guys have any questions, feel free to let's. I think like there is a QR code. You can shoot the questions there, but we keep this conversation interactive. So you have any question there? Yeah, it's you.
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you're talking about home stakers versus institutional stakers, but honestly, I mean, distributed validators can be run by anyone, right? It's not only home stakers that can run, distributed validators. Institutional stakers can also run. So I think distributed validators is about resilience. It's about if your node goes down, your validator is still running. That's what it's about. It's not much about decentralization. It's about resilience. So I am not sure to understand the things that you're saying about, it's about decentralization, because it's really about resilience. It's about, when things go down, I want to make sure that my validator is still upline. And anybody can do this, right? And so I'm not sure to understand this rhetoric here?
I think resilience is just another way of explaining decentralization and stuff like that. I mean, again, kind of, not sticking to the actual words, but what we're trying to say is that ultimately there's risks in running such a big network like Ethereum. Those risks can be from the individual level where you get hacked and your validator stops running. It can be kind of the intermediate level where a very big service provider is failing and gets hacked. And it can be on a governmental level where some governments trying to censor through discussing and talking and subpoenaing different entities and different companies. And so all of that is a risk. I think that everyone can use DVT, obviously, but I think that we need to focus on the bigger issues at hand. If everyone were solo stakers, DVT has, in my opinion, no place. I mean, if everyone is solo staking and you have 600,000 different nodes running, DVT is useless. I mean, it can bring some value, but it's very, very marginal. But that's not where we live, right? I mean, solo stakers are the heroes of Ethereum, but there are too few of them. And I don't think it's scalable. Like today, 95% of the stake is not solo staking. And so I think that through increasing solo stakings, you're absolutely right. I mean, solo stakers could use DVT, maybe to reduce the 32 ETH bond and stuff like that. Definitely, I think it can happen, and it does happen. But I think that on the greater scale, I think that if we can make those 4 or 5 entities that control Ethereum today use DVT with an additional 1,000 or 2,000 smaller operators, then that's a whole different ball game in terms of resilience to Ethereum, as you referred to.
Yeah,
go ahead.
No, sorry, please go ahead.
I was just going to add, I also think that what you said earlier is that's just not the ecosystem, right? Like, not everyone is highly technical, and we want it to be open to people who are not highly technical. Like, we want to keep growing as much as possible. And I think one more risk other than, so resilience is definitely part of it, but also when you're looking at, say, dominance of, this entire ecosystem's in a few centralized entities, and you see, like, okay, Lido's running 32% of nodes. Add that up with the other market leaders, you see this number approaching 51%, which would be, majority of the network. That's inherently adding risk, which is probably off-putting some new entrants to the market, and also probably, keeping, the price of Ethereum, would also be affected by that eventually too, because it is more risky. So if we can just keep reducing the risk of this whole ecosystem, we need to convince people that crypto is less risky. I think that's another really important part of DVT, and it does increase resilience, but that's just another benefit.
But that's exactly what I'm saying. Is like Lido will run distributed validators as well. Yeah. Like they will run them as well. So it's not reducing centralization. It's just they will run distributed validators in the same way. So that's not going to change. You say, okay, Lido has 30% of the market, fine. And if you say this technology will improve things, and I think it will, because I have been playing with, I have making tests. But it's not going to reduce the market of Lido either, because they will also use distributed validators, right? So that's what it's an important distinction that I think is important to make here.
I mean, yes and no. I mean, at the end of the day, when you have this technology, it enables you to do things. I mean, you are assuming that everybody's going to keep doing everything exactly the same, and you are referring all the time to solo or home validators, individual validators, whatever you want to call it. And you need 2 things to become a validator, which is, okay, you have to have the technical capabilities to do so, and you need 32 ETH. DVT, one of the things that allows you is that you no longer need 32 ETH. So we are broadening the spectrum of the people who are able to validate because they have the technical capabilities, which, by the way, are pretty low. I mean, you just need something like, I don't remember the gigabytes, but 2 terabytes in RAM. So, I mean, whatever that you can buy with $500. So at least is our approach is, and it's actually an interesting topic because it has been, I mean, we have been facing this internal debate. Okay, shall we focus in kind of professional validators and selling this technology as optimization of what they are already doing, or shall we focus in kind of the broader spectrum of the public and try to bring validation to everyone. We decided for the latter and try to bring validators to everyone or validation to everyone. And in my mind, yes, you are saying, okay, whoever is a professional validator will do exactly the same in a more resilient manner and most probably even more profitable, on a more profitable way. But we enable the probability or the possibility for someone who couldn't afford before to become a validator and to be a network participant. So at least in my terms, when I speak about decentralization or why DVT is enable decentralization, I speak on those terms. I'm lowering the barriers. I'm trying to be to make Ethereum accessible to anyone, not just to a reduced subsector of professional validators.
Maybe if I can, in 2 words, kind of paint you a picture where how Lido, Rocket Pool, and the rest will use DVT to kind of lower that risk you're talking about, become more resilient. Today's infrastructure for staking is siloed. What I mean by that is that when you run a validator, you can run 1 validator, you can run 10,000 validators. You're running them the same way, you, me, Coinbase, everyone else, the same exact way. You have a Bitcoin node, you have a validator client, you have just 1 validator client with a unique set of keys. That's it. If that gets compromised in any way, your entire validator set is getting compromised. And that's true for Rocket Pool, Lido, and so on and so forth. Now, both of them have issues. Lido have, I think, 20 or 30 operators. Each one of them is managing tens of thousands of validators. Rocket Pool have much longer kind of tail of operators, but they still have very big operators running hundreds of validators. And so they have the same issue. And so I think what will happen with DVT is a transition towards distributed backend versus a kind of a single point, a siloed backend. So if you have 30 Lido operators running, whatever, 100, 200,000 validators, each one of them is currently running 200,000 divided by 20 or 30, right? But with DVT, you still have the same number of validators, but they are interdependent with one another. So if one of them gets compromised, nothing happens to the validator itself because each one of those are not siloed anymore. They need to work with others using consensus protocol and threshold signatures to actually execute on the behalf of the validator. Now, when you're not in a silo type of infrastructure anymore, if one of them gets compromised, if one of them gets subpoenaed by the government, if one of them gets hacked, nothing happens to the validator set. So that's stage 1. Stage 2, and that's what you'll see with, for example, Lido, Router, V2, and Rocket Pool, and so on, is that you introduce other operators, not just the 20, 30 whitelisted operators you have. You can have 10,000 other community members joining, and that's kind of what you refer to, joining that operator set and joining those clusters. A cluster is basically a DVT validator running between 4, 7, 10, whatever amount of operators. And so even that small transition to still having whitelisted set of operators, but now they're interconnected and they need one another to actually operate the validator is a huge step forward. It makes resilience 100 times better. And you can have that from that point on even better with introducing permissionless operators and so on. So resilience is not just one thing, it's a lot of things. But specifically, we need to attack the bigger issue, which is siloed backends where you have one entity controlling 20, 30, 40, 50,000 validators. And those validators are as good as their protection is.
Thank you very much. I have many more questions, but I don't want to hijack the discussion. So if anybody has questions, please go ahead.
If we jump. Yeah, I just want to, it's super interesting. Are you guys learning something here today? Yeah? Okay, cool. Yeah, I just want to say that, I mean, this is a journey, right? Like, this panel is all about democratizing Ethereum and how we can evolve to like a fully, centralized system to a fully decentralized system. And it's not just about validators. We see that around, RPC provider, example, within, Infura and the launch of the decentralized node providing. We see that, I don't know, with wallets, within MetaMask we launched like snaps. All the idea is all about permissionless innovation to have developer build snaps, meaning they can extend the functionality of the wallet today. And this is all like power back to the community, like fully permissionless innovation. This is how we scale. And I think like similar with what we're speaking about today is like validators and fully democratization is where we need to go. And that's why also we need these instruments, all about having those provider and giving instruments. How many of you guys are solo staking? Cool, you see? 90%. I think we are there. Cool, yeah. I don't know if you guys have any question on solo staking. If not, we can move to the, I don't know, like liquidity. I don't know, like, or what are you excited about around what need to come next in order to, to satisfy end users that are staking, but also satisfy, because we are in Barcelona, we are all developers, majority, like, those developers spinning, and do we have enough onboarding tooling for developers? Like, that's also the other side of the questions. Let's just remember that, yeah, we're in developer conference.
Yeah. We're putting a lot of efforts in the developer ecosystem, if you will. The idea is that if you have a network, you can build tools for that network, and then if you build them once, a lot of people can use them. And so we're working on stuff like local testnets, like you see with Ganesh in an EVM setting for DVT. So the idea is that you can run on your local machine execution client, consensus client, and SSV for in our case, and interact with all of them using your own application. So you have the entire tech stack, and you can test everything out. So that's, I think, a really significant thing for developers to kind of interact and start building. I think stuff like data transparency, RPC, API, all of those types of things developers need, guidelines, like all of those types of things are crucial, and I think that's what's going to help them adopt. In general, I think Ethereum staking is in a very special position, I think. Like, if you look 2.5 years ago, I don't know how many crypto dinosaurs there are here, but traditionally mining was a different ecosystem than everything else. Like, mining was mining and blockchains was blockchain, like completely different. And you can actually see that in the value capturing. Like, the biggest benefiters of crypto mining, I'm sure none of you can say who they are, except maybe NVIDIA. But there were huge companies in China and everywhere else, huge companies that were the majority beneficiaries of mining, and they were completely distacked from the actual blockchain space. Now with staking, all of a sudden, this entire $10 or $20 billion industry folded back its value into its stakers or its holders. And so that's a very interesting point of view and a very interesting industry coming about. But also, if you look at Ethereum today, Ethereum basically has the strategy of creating or externalizing or outsourcing, if you will, majority of its core components. So, if you look at L2s do scaling for Ethereum. L2s is basically, outsourcing your scaling issues to others. Obviously, Ethereum protocol enables that all, but you get the picture. MEV, exactly the same way. Ethereum has an issue with ordering transactions. Okay, let's build a protocol which externalizes everything and then opens up a market for it. And staking is no different. Staking, DVT, all of that chunk is no different at all. And I think, for that matter, I think stakers will take a significant part in all of that vertical industries, because they're doing staking. Obviously, they're using MEV. Obviously, they will some way find themselves to be validating L2s as well. So I think that's the biggest opportunity for stakers, staking application, all of those types of things. It's a huge value capturing. Like today, the gas prices are, what is it, like 15, 20 way, like it's nothing. Like, if you go back 3 years ago, it was 300, 400, 600 way for gas. Like, you can expect the next 2 or 3 years, maybe 2 years, that MEV will be the majority amount of rewards that stakers get, like by a mile. And you can get to 8 or even 10% APR just by that when transaction costs will hit that high. And so this is where the value is. This is where projects like Diva and others will find the value for their users, because when you can get 10% of your ETH, you need to be brain dead to not do that.
Yeah.
Just a couple of notes there. I mean, you really have said it in an extremely positive way, but I rather refer to Diva not as something that is going to be my user, because it's not going to be my service. We are just developing software, and the idea is actually to be a kind of a common good, something that anybody can use. It's not like I'm trying to make a platform so I get the most profitable thing out of there or whatever. I just want to make something that everybody can use and to help to make it a bit better. Maybe it's a little bit idealistic, but this is the way that actually we sold it to our seed investors. I mean, it's not like I'm trying to do the best in a commercial manner for my users, because they are not my users. I just trying to make the best software that I can in order for them to make their lives easier and to use tools more resilient and to try to benefit the ecosystem and such. I mean, if we are getting money out of it, okay, it's fine. If we are not, it's fine as well.
Yeah, and I think what both of you have said is, we can make this better, right? And also, if we find an innovation in this ecosystem and a way to make it better, like I think DVT is arguably better for the ecosystem, that can become the new standard for these providers. And I think what I'm excited about in this whole staking ecosystem is the opportunity for new entrants to the market. And that's pretty much what our protocol is trying to solve for, because their largest issue is obtaining market share in this highly competitive environment. So users give us Ethereum, we give them basically a little bit of Lido, Rocket Pool, currently Frax, Swell, Staffy, and we're adding more. But the idea is, as these LSTs pop up, to make sure they have the right security, and then down the road, the DAO can vote on who's included in this index. It can grow, it can shrink, and basically, because our protocol will have TVL, we can drive TVL to these new protocols that enter this highly competitive space right away and lower their barrier to entry while increasing the amount of quality validators and quality liquid staking providers to make it easy for users. But especially because we're a DAO and we'll have these voting powers, basically it allows us to, as there's innovations or as there's something that we're doing better that everyone else can then copy or implement, or new innovations can pop up, we can keep adapting to that ecosystem and encouraging that competition and also that innovation.
Cool, I see we have 2 minutes. Let's shoot some spicy questions.
So I don't know how spicy this one is, but so you are talking about market share and how people can adopt DVT technology. And actually, I do believe that DVT is essential for the ecosystem. So don't take me wrong in any of these questions that but all comes down to latency. What is the latency of the nodes? Because when you have one single validator in one node, you don't have to sync with anybody. Now you have 4 nodes running in Sydney, Singapore, Canada, and Sao Paulo or whatever, right? And my question is for all of you 3 guys: do you have studies that shows that distributed validators perform better than current validators? And if you have, can you share the links with us, the community, so that we can see those studies and learn from it?
We will do in due time. Actually, we got those studies. Yeah, and the latency is negligible. Yeah, we'll share it.
We haven't written about it. Maybe we should. We're currently seeing about, 700 to 800 millisecond latency. I would say the next year it will probably drop to 200 or 300 milliseconds. There's a lot of optimizations you can do that we just didn't have the time to do just yet. Couple that with more advanced consensus protocols that can get lower as well. In terms of performance, we're benchmarking ourselves against other DVT platforms and against a Lighthouse stock setup with, I think, 100, 150 validators. We are at par or slightly better than Lighthouse in performance. We haven't published it yet. Maybe we should. It's part of what we're doing in the mainnet rollout we announced 2 days ago. Performance is really good. Also, the performance to submit an attestation is, as I said, like 700 milliseconds longer. But you also need to keep in mind that when you are actually broadcasting the DUT, you're broadcasting it 4x, 7x, 10x, or 13x faster than anyone else, because you have 4, 7, 10, or 13 nodes. And propagation time in the blockchain space is everything. Like, if your attestation doesn't get within the 3 or 4 seconds mark time, it's probably going to be included in the next 2 or 3 blocks, and if it's not there, then never again. With blocks, it's even more aggressive. So overall, I don't think you'll see issues with latency, at least as far as we've been testing it for the last 2 years. We've been at par or even slightly higher than the benchmark. So.
Another unrelated question, but what about governance or regulation for getting those new people in this more democratized Ethereum validator system?
So I think our approach was pretty straight and actually pretty unique. We are a DAO-based project. We don't decide anything. We as I mean. There's a DAO. The DAO is the one financing development. The DAO is the one voting on everything, from the contract parameters all the way to who is building clients. I don't think SSV can exist if it's not a public good type of project, just because nobody will trust it. It's not we want massive adoption, and for massive adoption, it needs to be felt like it's a community-driven, community-owned project. So DAO-based, everything is voted on.
Yeah, pretty much alike. I mean, our protocol is not even a mainnet, and we have already distributed the tokens to have that DAO ready, and they will be decided even on the protocol deployment to mainnet. So yeah, pretty much fully decentralized from the very beginning.
Sounds good. Any other questions? See a couple. Yes. I was hoping to do some fitness. Come to you.
My question is, I'm still trying to wrap my head around the DVT situation. What has to happen for the likes of Lido to move more aggressively toward DVT to their customers? Because it's quite a tribal ecosystem over there. What has to happen for that to move, I guess, more efficiently?
Lido is the most aggressive team in the space currently wanting to adopt DVT by a mile. Yeah.
So is there still an existential risk that they don't adopt it?
Oh, they will adopt it. Between adoption and scale, there's going to be a few years. So Lido recently released their router type of architecture, where they enable modules to kind of plug in and take some of the ETH to be managed by those modules. Their vision is that those modules would be, a lot of them will be DVT driven, and kind of that's what they're promoting. And so I believe that by the end of the year, early next year, you'll see first modules being launched. And so they'll probably take a few percent, single-digit percentage out of the inbound Ethereum coming into Lido. They will be routed to those modules. And I believe that if that will be successful, the next 24, 36 months, 48 months, you'll see that percentage going bigger and bigger and stronger. I think Lido is very sensitive to the community and the feedback they're getting, and so you won't find any more aggressive team wanting to adopt DVT in particular than the Lido team. I have stronger, I would say, feedback for other teams, but Lido is very aggressive.
Yeah.
Other teams other than Lido, yeah. Look, I mean, I've been in this SSV journey for 2.5, 3 years, ever since DVT was a presentation by the Ethereum Foundation. The amount of education we did the past 2.5 years, not just us, everyone, our competitors, everyone, was tremendous. We're at a point where there's nobody in the space that, in the staking business that doesn't talk DVT. There's almost nobody that doesn't have that on their long-term roadmap. I would say the majority of the bigger players have that in the medium roadmap, their medium roadmap. And there's a lot of, there's a very big tail of other smaller companies that already starting to develop or already developing on DVT. And so I think it's up to us to make sure this is launches well and it's kind of delivers on its promise.
Yeah, and what drove that and what can continue to drive that for both Lido and other providers, probably, I would say community and competition. So the community was like, there's this innovation, we have to do it. Community sounding alarm bells of, hey, they had a vote if they should limit their dominance, and Lido voted not to. Rocket Pool had a vote to limit their dominance, and they did pass it. So I think, that seeing that in a competitor, and then seeing, the new standard of DVT, I think from the community is important, and then also seeing increased competition, so continuing to support, new entrants to the market and all of that.
Yeah, actually we have spoken with Lido several times, and I would say that I fully agree with you. I mean, they are aggressively pursuing DVT, but the thing is, at the end of the day, they launch what they launch, and in order to migrate that enormous liquidity to a new whole system, it's quite a tough task, and it will takes them time. And also within DVT, you have different point of views. You have the point of view, as we were commenting before, like I want to approach professional validators that are using DVT, which is one approach. I want to try to bring along everyone to become a validator, which is another approach. And I think Lido is getting kind of the more professional approach maybe, but it doesn't mean that they are not migrating to DVT or they are embracing that technology. They do, because it's an improvement over what they are using right now, but it's not that easy to migrate to a whole new set of technology when you haven't built that for that.
Cool.
What do you encourage? So if somebody's holding staked ETH, ST ETH, and they don't want to run, they're not going to be able to run a validator. Are you just telling them to? Would you tell them to hold and stay in that position and just hope that Lido does the right thing? Or I feel like the retail customer is confused. Do they move to a different protocol, or?
Look, I don't think that, well, it depends on where you're moving, right? I mean, if you're moving towards solo staking, then do that. I think we need more solo stakers. If you move to a worse service than Lido, then you didn't do that's not a good choice. So I think that where the retail side of things is, when I said before that I don't think retail users should know about DVT at all, I still stand by that statement. It doesn't mean that it was a great tweet the other day that somebody did statistics around the amount of ST ETH holders and the amount of LDO holders, and they did the same for Lido. And so there's literally about 5% of them that hold both of the tokens. Those 5% should put a lot of stress and a lot of pressure on the Lidos of the world, the Rocket Pools of the world, to make the right decisions. That's the community that actually makes those teams work. The rest of them have no idea. I mean, 95% of the RETH, ST-ETH, or whatever ETH, other LST token you're talking about, have no idea what's happening behind the scenes, and they shouldn't. That's okay. They're retail users for a reason. You as a retail user, you should be involved with those communities and try to promote that conversation. Like, we had a lot of conversation within the Rocket Pool community, and it took a while to find that formula, because the Rocket Pool community started out by saying DVT is a competitor. And like with conversation and everything, they finally realized it's not a competitor, but they at the same breath they said, well, it's not something we need to integrate. Now we're at a point, after a long conversations and a lot of kind of interacting with the core team and so on, where they finally realize where DVT can make a difference. And I think with Rocket Pool in specific, there's a lot of whales there holding hundreds of mini pools, hundreds. And so it's great that they have collateral, but they also have a lot of power over the protocol. So it's not very decentralized in that sense. And so I think DVT can do a lot there. And so, yeah, the community should be pushing towards the right decision. It's the same, like, with the whole client diversity type of discussion, right? I mean, there was a lot of community pressure to move towards more client diversity, be more sensitive towards it, and it made a huge difference. And I think the same goes here. That's the pressure we need to be holding. I personally don't agree with limiting Lido for a specific % of the stake on Ethereum, because it doesn't mean anything. Like, okay, Lido limits itself for 30% of the Ethereum stake. Okay, where's the rest going? Is it going to a really bad protocol that nobody audited and they can get slashed? Who knows? Like, you need to play with the industry, not against it. Lido is successful for a reason. They're really good at what they're doing. They just need to use DVT to make sure that they are not increasing the risk for everyone else. That's it.
Sounds good. I mean, my lesson learned here is definitely like education is one big part, but also like empower communities to give feedback and implement those feedback fast in your roadmap. But yeah, I just want to thank everybody. You want to give like literally 10 seconds key takeaway around distributed validators and liquid staking, so you can sleep better tonight.
I mean, actually, my take is, I mean, no, I mean, I fully agree with ton of the things that you have said, well, that you both have said, and I'm really enjoying that this conversation has been interactive, so the people is really getting involved, because we are nothing without the community. At the end of the day, distributed validation technology or liquid staking, what tries to do is, I mean, paraphrasing the name of the panel, is democratizing Ethereum and bringing Ethereum to the people. So without the people, it's pointless. It doesn't make sense. So happy to have everyone involved.
My estimate is that by the end of 2024, beginning of 2025, I would say DVT will be 10 to 20% of the Ethereum staked, or managing 10 to 20%. And just the idea that we have dedicated panels for DVT is something that wasn't in existence 12 months ago. Yeah. Believe me, there were only crickets when we talked DVT about 20 months ago. And so it's coming a long way. Like, my benchmark is L2s. L2s are, been discussed for years and years. Only like 2 years ago, they actually hit mainnet and started to scale. And still most of the transactions, or at least the TVL or whatever how you want to measure it, is not there yet. But everyone still knows L2s are the future. So it's going to take a long time. It's very hard to change people's ideas, minds, and development habits. But having said that, 10 to 20%, I would say the next 18 months. And hopefully, I want to see one or two more serious competitors in the DVT space. I think that will promote that to 30, 40% in the next 24 months.
Yeah, and I would say Lido has a great product. There are quality providers other than Lido, though, as well. And you can gain access to a very wide validator set of quality-proven, market-leading protocols and providers. I would say check out Asymmetry, because we want to continue to, as DVT grows, hold these providers to the same standard. And really make sure that people have a very easy but trusted way of increasing this capital efficiency and getting more retail to stake their Ethereum.
Sounds good. So let's democratize Ethereum. Big round of applause for our panelists.